Well, thanks everyone for joining JASCI's webinar series. Happy Friday. Today we're going to be discussing our labor management and reporting tools. So we'll be going over some labor tracking, right? Giving you full visibility across all of your workforce. You can also basically put standards into JASCI so you can track everyone's performance in the system, as well as our customizable reporting platform too. So you'll be able to come in to the platform itself and make some pivot tables, graphs, graphics, analytics, etc. And Joe's going to show you some of that today. So Joe, if you're ready to go, I'll hand things off to you and we can get
Sure.
started here.
Yeah, let me share my screen. All right, can you see that?
Yep, we can see that.
All right, perfect. All right, thanks everybody for joining. Today's webinar, we're going to be reviewing um, labor management as well as our reporting tools. You've seen a little bit from our reporting tools in previous webinars that we've had. Maybe we've gone and shown some of the dashboard that you see here on the homepage, or we might have popped into the reporting menu option. We've also shown gravity waveless work management during some of our picking webinars and outbound webinars. So I highly recommend checking out the webinars that have gravity incorporated. Today's topic is going to be kind of focusing in on labor and then also this built-in reporting tool. So let's go ahead and start with the labor side. Now, as I go to my menu options and for that are related to labor. You're going to see a few of them here. You're going to see our labor lookup. This is like a standard lookup screen where you can plug in dates and time ranges as well as maybe a particular work type that you want to look at across all the labor data for all of the employees and all of the work zones incorporated. And you'll be able to get information about that type of labor. And then we also have it by team member. So we're going to be showing an example of both of these today. A labor lookup by team member is basically diving into one particular team member's activity, whether it be one work type or zone, or maybe you want to look across everything they've done in a time period. We're also going to talk about labor standards. Because JASCI has a built-in labor management set of features, we also have the ability to not only track all labor, but score how long it took for the labor to be performed. So we have what's called labor standards, and you can program these to be by work type or task and the zone that it's going to occur in. You can set up the expectation for the amount of quantity expected to perform per hour, or amount of lines, or amount of works or tasks or picks. And you can create these labor standards, which we'll then use for the scoring in our labor lookups. The labor standards, we're also going to be using these in Gravity, where you can see a projection of how much labor you have ahead of you by profile, which can help you make decisions on any work you'd like to reprioritize or any workflows or tasks that you want to reorganize your staff to perform based on what you see in Gravity. We also have indirect labor. Indirect labor is a way that you can track non-task or transactional functions in JASCI. So, for example, maybe you have sweeping floors or building boxes, attending meetings, preparing things. Those are all tasks that you might perform in a warehouse. However, that's not going to involve any scans from JASCI to do those things, but you'd still like to see that in the labor data that you're viewing in JASCI. That's where we have this indirect labor page where you can sign in and basically sign in and sign out of different activities you set up, and that'll feed directly into the labor tables. So let's start out by going into this labor lookup. And this is going to show us a few different things that we can enter here. We can do the date and time ranges. So maybe you want to look for activity in a certain shift or a certain time of the day. And then also you have your tasks. So let's say we wanted to look at all of our, you can see I have a lot of different tasks in my demo environment. Let's say we wanted to look at the pallet pick data, see how everybody's performing when it comes to pallet picks. And here we're just going to go back in time. We'll say, let's just observe all picks within the last year, regardless of the time of day. We also have preferences down here that we can set. The preferences can be, how we're displaying the time and if we're looking in particular departments or not. You can set up departments for your team members to be a part of. if you'd like to view labor by department. I typically just leave it as all. So let's go ahead and look at our pallet picks from the last year. And we're going to go ahead and search that. And what this is going to do is go and pull all of our data within that year. You can see I do pallet picks in these two different zones, 100 and 300. And you can see a majority of the picks that I did were in zone 100. That's just typically how my demos are set up. I do most of my picks there. So let's take a look at that section, that zone. We can actually see the total amount of hours, the volume of it. We can see how much we've done by zone compared to the total across all zones. We can also see our per hour stats. So our units per hour, work per hour, which is going to be amount of tasks for a pallet pick. That's one pallet pick. Or you could do it by lines per hour if you wanted to measure that more by lines. For something like pallet pick, I'd probably go by work per hour, since you're not really, the units could vary and the lines could vary. Well, the lines are probably going to be one for a pallet, but the units could greatly vary on a pallet. So work per hour would probably be the best metric to go by for that. But you also have your volumes over here and then your standard. Your standard is going to be how everyone collectively has scored against the labor standard in this set of data. A good score, right on par with the time with expectations, would be 100. So 131 is a great score. You can see the amount of picks that we did, 462 pallet picks. You can see the total amount of lines and units, etc. So if we go into detail, we can see everybody that picked in that zone in that time period. So we can see we have the JASCI demo account, we have Gabriel, myself, and Samuel all picking in here. And this gives us the opportunity to not only view, how much time each person has spent within there. Like Gabe, for example, has barely done any pallet picks. In fact, he's only done one pallet pick. Most of the pallet picks were done by JASCI demo. You can see 409 of them here. So this is going to give you data to compare everybody against each other. For example, you could see, well, it looks like Jassy Demo is the main palette picker, but Joe has done some of it. I have 48 different palette picks. What else has Joe done? Well, we can actually come here and we can hit detail. And this is going to be a shortcut to that labor lookup by team member, what you see at the top here. That's that second menu option we talked about just a moment ago, the labor lookup by team member. You can go into this directly, or you can actually take a shortcut to it like I just did there with that detail button. And what this is going to show us now is in that same date range and time range, everything that I have performed. And you'll be able to see the date started and date ended, as well as the time. You can see down to the second that something occurred. You can also monitor if I've signed on or off to the system, which if you start to see a bunch of those stacked up next to each other, that means the person's either having some connection issues, or they're just signing out and signing in for no reason, or maybe they haven't performed work for a certain amount of time and they got bumped out. So it'll ping when you have to when you sign off or sign back into the system. Now you'll also see a bunch of data here. You'll see the zone, the task, the zone, the amount of time that it took. You could see your per hour stats again. You can also see your individual labor score on each task that was performed. You can see also the total works, lines, and units that were performed there. A big thing is the work control number. That work control number is a unique identifier to the task that was performed. So in the event that you're trying to research someone who really messed a few things up that day and you need to find all of the work that they touched, you could do lookups by them and then see all these work control numbers. You can also get a lot of this data out of our reporting tool, which we're going to be talking about towards the end of this webinar. It's kind of a more modern approach to finding this labor data, but JASCI does have these built-in labor lookups, which have great comparisons with all of your per hour stats. We can also see here that I have the weighted standard of 120.96, which means that I'm doing, a lot better than what's programmed in for the labor standards. And if we have a lot of people scoring way above it, then maybe it's time to update our labor standards to be a little bit more of a match to the labor force that's out there. But if I had, say, a 60 or a 50 or a 70, we would actually highlight this as yellow or red, which is helpful as an indicator of how that person's performing to kind of make sure we highlight that to show that that person's performing below par. And what it means by the weighted standard is that it's going to compare all of the labor that we've done in that time period compared to the amount of hours we spend in each individual task and zone that it occurs in. And it's basically considering our score versus the amount of hours all combined against the total amount of hours that we have tracked in JASCI. And it's giving us that weighted standard. So if most of our work was in, say, putaways instead of pallet picks, or vice versa, it wouldn't completely outweigh it if there's a volume difference. So if we look through here, we can also display a lot of our different labor. You could see on my demos, I have a lot of sign-offs. It's just kind of the nature of my demonstrations. But you can see all the different types of activities I've done, and then we can also see the exact work control number. So this is we can also, I don't track errors in my demo environment. However, we can track errors. Errors would be like scans that produced an error message that to go on the screen. JASCI is typically pretty helpful with our errors. We'll display a message that is most helpful to the user to why we couldn't accept the scan that they tried to perform instead of just saying error. We'll say this was already completed or this product's not needed. And if you want to track errors, you can start to track, what workflows and what employees are running into issues more commonly than others. And that can help you just improve overall the speed and performance of your task of your labor force. All right, so that was our labor lookups. We're going to talk about these labor standards a little bit more. So if we go to our labor standard maintenance, this is going to show us all of our tasks and zone combinations. The reason that we do it by zone is because maybe you're picking in one zone versus another is going to be totally separate equipment, or maybe you have to go higher up in the air. Maybe things are just generally going to take longer, heavier products, etc. So you might want to have different labor standards by zone that they're occurring in. Or maybe the drop-off point is much further from that zone than some of the other zones. So you'll want to consider those as you're setting up your labor standards and we'll go to one of them as an example here. We'll go to our, uh, where do we have? You sort by task. All right, we can go to our palette picks for zone 100 and hit edit. And here we can see how much work performed per hour the expectation is, or lines or quantity. You can also do this by other data that you might have about your work or locations, which could be the amount of cases processed, the amount of pallets processed, how many locations. So this work performed is going to be based on the amount of tasks. So if you're doing pallet picks, that's basically one task is to go get one pallet and go drop it off. If you're doing a case pick, that entire work is going to be your whole pick path. And then the drop off, that'll be one work. So maybe if you're doing case picking, maybe you want to monitor more by lines or quantity than you are by works performed. Or maybe you want to go by cases or pallets that are picked. So you have your different options for what you want to put your values at, but you can choose a one of these values and plug in something, and then you can always come back in here and change it if you need to. So I could say, hey, everyone's performing a little bit above par, so maybe I want to make this 25 per hour or 24 per hour, something like that, and challenge them a little bit more. So you can just go and save your labor standards, and then going forward, you'll be able to measure all of the labor against that new standard. These labor standards are very easy to set up, as you can see there. And then they're also used, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be used in Gravity Waveless Work Management. So Gravity is a program that we have where you're gonna build your own profiles to show you how much work is out there, and then JASCI is going to show you how much work currently matches that, how many lines and quantities match that, and then also if you have labor standards for that task or work type, you'll be able to see our prediction on how much work you have ahead of you. So this is telling me I have 29 minutes of pallet picks. I've got, for my e-commerce side, I have 6 minutes of put wall picks, 9 minutes of picking batches of singles. I have 4 minutes of discrete picks. And I can see I have 3 hours and 43 minutes of my Amazon orders. So by seeing this, maybe I want to take some of my staff that's in one of these other, that's typically working with the tasks in these other profiles. Maybe I want to shift them over to be picking with the cart that gets the Amazon orders, or in a zone that has those, or in a work type for them. This will help you influence of where you need to staff people by seeing how much work you have ahead of you in that profile at this point in time. So that's another area that we use the labor standards. And then the final thing we'll talk about here with the labor under the labor profile is this indirect labor, and then we'll talk a little bit about the reporting tool. So the indirect labor, we're going to be able to come in here and you're going to choose a department for that your team members in. So we'll go ahead and go into one of these departments, and then you can set up your own tasks and the descriptions for those tasks. So someone can do a sign on and sign off approach. So we could enter our team member, and then we can choose the what we'd like to do and then hit sign on or sign off, or we could do it from down here from just the list and hit sign on or sign off. All right, now it's telling me this is invalid because I'm not actually in that inbound department. I think my team member's tied to outbound. But if we wanted to sign on, and this is going to start tracking the amount of time that we've spent doing that. And then when we go to hit sign off, it's going to complete it and then feed it into our labor tables. And that way we can get a little bit closer to the full 8 hour day that that employee might have instead of just the 6 hours of transactions that they performed in JASCI. Maybe there was some time for lunch that you account for, but also maybe there's time for them to do things that they need to do daily that aren't tracked in JASCI, like I mentioned before with the sweeping floors or maybe some VAS, or maybe it's a meeting they attended or cleaning, sweep the workstation, prepping boxes. There's a ton of activities that you can now feed into the labor table with the rest of the labor. Um, so let's go ahead and shift into the reporting tool. Um, if you've seen our first webinar that we've done this year, or actually we started in December, November of 2025. One of the first ones that we did more recently was going on the navigation of JASCI, and we probably showed a little bit of this dashboard that's available. This is actually part of our reporting tool. So everyone that has JASCI is going to have access to the reporting tool and dashboards. We actually have several dashboards here where you can view different types of information. These dashboards are going to be right on the home page, so it's just kind of easy to get to see different types of information you'd like to view, right when you log in. The one that we have pulled up right now is called Snapshots. This is going to have, metrics that show you just like quick health about your fulfillment center, how many orders you have, how many are in trouble, how many you've downloaded and shipped within the time range that you have plugged in. Same thing for putaways, cycle counts and location checks, your replenishments, even locations. So this is what we call snapshots. They're going to be individual numbers. You can drill down into these, but they're going to be quick metrics that you can view to see, what you have going on that day. Now, we have all these different dashboards, but we also have the full-blown reporting tool. So if we go into our reporting profile and click on the reports button, you're actually going to see the menu profile up top get completely replaced. Now, I haven't shipped anything today's or this week, so what I'm going to do is just go back in time a little bit to pull some data onto these charts just so it's not blank. And we'll explain this reporting tool a little bit more. So now that we're in the reporting tool, we can actually see these options up top. The very first one called reporting. This is just going to be access to all of the different tables that you might want to create your own reports from, whether it's about your inventory, your shipments, your orders, your team members, your customers, just all work within JASCI, even doc appointments as well. You can see all of these different tables that we have in every possible column in the table and all data across as far back as you'd like to look. And then you can start to create your own saved renditions of the tables to basically build your report from scratch within each table that we have. And then the rest of our reporting tool here, all these other tabs up top, these are going to be pre-made reports that JASCI has. So we've made reports, and some of these reports have columns where we've basically done calculations or comparisons of data that's cross-table. So we're constantly creating new reports that you can view within JASCI, and these are usually based on customer request. So if a customer in our community requests a certain type of report to be added, and we agree that it's a good one to have, what we'll do is we'll actually add that in for everybody to be able to leverage. And so you can see here as we go through the inbound and outbound, you can see we have a pretty robust list of reports that you can access. For example, maybe you want to monitor your partially received or over received POs or your dock to stock time on putaways. So you can see how long the product's sitting there after receipt before it gets into inventory and before it's allocatable. That's always a metric that people are trying to improve. So it's great to have a report that calls out exactly how long putaways have taken. Let's say it's on the outbound and you want to be able to monitor your different picks by type or by zone or your shipments or the orders that are in trouble. Maybe you want to review yesterday's shipments and see everything that went out the door. You have all these different outbound reports. When it comes to locations, we can monitor your highest activity locations. We can see your lowest activity locations that still have inventory in them. We can see your empty locations. One of my favorites is being able to identify locations or SKUs that have too many pickable locations. So that way you're not occupying too much territory just with one SKU. Because sometimes that can start to get out of hand as you're putting product away into different locations, and maybe you haven't allocated all of it out of there, and you're adding to a new location from new inventory that you ordered. It can start to get out of hand with those pickable locations. So this report helps make sure that we don't get too many of them. We have sales reports, so we could show you your top selling items or your dead items. Inventory, you can view all sorts of different inventory, whether it's your inventory levels, inventory on hand. Maybe you want to see lot and expiration information about your inventory, or maybe you want to see a roll up. So maybe you're not viewing it by location, but you're just seeing the total quantity that you have of a SKU. We have a wide range of different inventory reports. We also have labor reports, very similar to what I just showed you, but in honestly, our reporting tool has a little bit more, a little bit friendlier of a format for navigating, which we'll show you in just a second, what the navigation tools look like in these reports. But you can actually access all of that same labor data within there. And then also interfacing. So all of the different interfaces and integrations that you want to be able to monitor, if there's any errors, things like that. We have reports that are solely focused on the integrations. Now you can see this management piece. This is also how we can declare who has access to the reporting tool, and we can build roles for those different team members. And a role is basically going to include what that role has access to, what reports, if you're going to hide or remove certain columns from certain reports and charts. That's the report and graph roles. And then once you have a role, you do the role assignment to assign that role to a team member. So you can create, a few different roles. Maybe you have one for admins. Maybe you have one for like portal users if you're giving any suppliers or customers or clients portal views to this. Um, and this is how you control who's able to see what within this reporting tool. Lastly, we'll actually go into one of these reports and just examine, the different tools that are associated with it. If we click this one, for example, the freight detail report with handling fees. I haven't shipped anything this week, so we'll just go back in time to show plenty of shipments there. I actually went back 3 years, so we'll have plenty of data. And you can see I actually, on some of my shipments, I've done rate shopping demos, so you'll actually see some actual ship charges here. This is going to be a report that focuses in on how much we're spending on shipping, which can help a supervisor of a warehouse really start to understand where most of their money is going when it comes to shipping items. We can help identify if you've been overspending or if you're shipping too much air. This is also a great way to help negotiate better rates with your different carriers because you'll have that data right at your fingertips. But we can see here if we click into these, we can sort if we'd like to. So if we wanted to see some of our most expensive shipments, we could hit actual ship charts. Just a note on ship charge, by the way, we also have the ability to do a total charge in the event that you want to apply a markup on what we've actually calculated with our built-in shipping platform. So here we could also see the carrier and service level. We could see if it's a multi-client environment, we could see which client that was for. And same thing with fulfillment center. Now, when it comes to our reporting tool, you can actually filter by your different clients if you're multi-company, and you can filter by your different fulfillment centers if you're multi-location. So just something to keep in mind. The reporting tool can be across your entire tenancy, and then you have the option to filter down to a particular company or fulfillment centers. Company is typically going to be if you have different brands under the umbrella, whether that's, just how a company operates, or more typically it's going to be a 3PL. In this one, we're also going to show you like box information, the order that it was tied to, when it was shipped, the tracking information, a whole bunch of data here. But if we look at our tools up top that we have, we can search by different date ranges. We can search within all of the columns here for a certain bit of data. So maybe we wanted to search a sales order without having to go and find the sales order column. We can also search within here too. If we clicked on this, we can type right into the filter. And then you also have your options for saving different reports. If you've sorted, hid, or removed certain columns, done certain things to the data, you can actually save your reports to either be private or public. Public would mean that everyone else in your tenancy is able to view that saved version of a report. Private would be if it's really just a report that you intend to view and you don't want other people, going into there and getting confused. Um, we also have the actions button. So this actions button is going to be all the different things we can do to the data. So if we wanted to filter, if we wanted to hide or remove certain columns, we have that ability here. So let's say I wanted to hide my company ID because it's irrelevant for this one. And same thing with fulfillment center. Maybe I'm only one fulfillment center. I can hit apply, and now we're no longer going to see those columns here. We also have the ability to filter by different metrics. We can by multiple columns at once. We can sort or aggregate the data. We can create a chart if we'd like to. Um, and we also have some options for if we'd like to download or set up a subscription to the report. I'm going to talk about those two in just a moment. First, I'll just show a quick example. If we wanted to make a chart with this information, we can come in here and choose the different data points and the axes. So let's say we wanted to see, by carrier, that's going to be our label. We want to see what our actual ship charge was, and we'd like to we could show, say, hey, show us the highest one that we did, or we could do the average or the sum. So I'll do the sum because we want to find out how much we spent in this 3-year period with them, and we'll show highest to lowest. So when I hit apply, what this is going to do is show me how much I've spent in UPS, USPS, and FedEx, for example, in this report on all of my shipping. So you have these tools, you have the ability to create charts, do different things with the data from all of the different reports that we have built into JASCI. And then again, you can save the ones that are most important to you. And you can also control which reports you're able to access and which ones are just available in general. Because we do have a lot of reports. So you may want to narrow this down on how many reports that you have, just to the ones that are most relevant for you. And lastly, if we go back to our data here and we have our actions, we can come down here to the download and subscribe. These are some of my favorite features of the reporting tool. When it comes to download, this is going to be where we declare, if we'd like it to be a CSV, HTML, Excel, or PDF. We can also send this as an email directly out of the system to particular emails. We can CC or blind carbon copy people. We can also change what the subject and the body attached with this is, and this will send an attachment with this report. So that's a really nice feature of the download. And then if you want to do that on a reoccurring basis, you can set up what's called a subscription, where the email address will receive the report on a frequency that you set up, and you can also choose the time of day that it'll send out, which is a really nice feature. This would eliminate a lot of people from even needing to come into the software if they really just use the system for getting reports. And it really frees up a lot of time for supervisors or those that run the reports and send the reports at the end of the day or at a certain time of the day. Instead of having to go spend time doing that, you can just set up a reoccurring subscription for that person that's asking for the report. This is also very helpful for 3PLs in the event that maybe you don't want to give them portal access and have them going through all the data and asking a bunch of questions, things like that. You could just set them up with a subscription to get their reports on their shipments or their 3PL billing charges or inventory, things like that. So that kind of rounds off what I wanted to talk about today. We talked about all of the labor visibility within JASCI, our labor standards, and how they're applied for scoring and predicting how much labor is out there with gravity. We talked about the indirect labor function within JASCI to track non-task related, non-transactional activity and feed that into the labor tables as well, which gives you a better view on the full shift of the employee. And then we also talked about this reporting tool here, the dashboards, the different types of reports that we have pre-made versus accessing just our tables in general. And then also what you can do within these reports, all the different actions. So if you have any questions on what we showed today, feel free to reach out to us. And we're always happy to dive into a further demonstration and show you that how nice this reporting tool or our labor features are for anyone using JASCI's WMS. So appreciate all the time today, and James, I'll pass it back to you to close things up.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I appreciate the time spent on that. It looks like we don't have any current questions in the chat, but if you do, feel free to put them in or follow up with us on the follow. Yeah, as of next week, I believe our webinar's on our omni-channel based workflow set for rapid implementation. So that would be a good one for some of the more streamlined, basic processes that we have within JASCI. So looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Um,
we highly recommend checking that one out. It's going to be a great webinar.
Definitely. Well, thanks, Joe, and we appreciate everyone's time.
Yep.
Take care.
All right, thank you.